We're going to build on the themes that were touched on in the first panel. We're joined by Supervisor Hahn and Jim Newton, who I will introduce in just a moment, to explore how the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games are going to serve as a turning point for the transportation system. So again, echoing the themes that we just heard, not just about what we need to host the Games, but how we can use this event to reshape LA into a more transit-friendly and accessible and connected region. So we're going to talk about public perceptions of transit and also the critical importance of safety, where a single incident can undermine years of process. And I think we'll also hear about some long-awaited projects. So let me introduce our keynote panelists. So as chair of Metro's board of directors, Supervisor Hahn has not just dedicated her whole career to public service, but right now is playing perhaps a central role in shaping the future of transportation in the region as we prepare for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And thank you for joining her in this conversation is Jim Newton, who is a lecturer at UCLA, a veteran journalist, who's founding editor of UCLA's Blueprint magazine. And I did not know this, but he has a biography of Jerry Garcia, which is going to be released on August 5th. So thanks so much. I'm going to hand it over to our panel.
Thank you very much. And yes, let's go plug for the book. Are we on here? Does that work? Do I need to do something here? Sorry. And on is good. Thank you all. Thank you for the introduction. And yes, I do have a book coming out on August 5th. It's available for pre-order. Thank you. Listen, it's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. Maybe an on switch. Is that on?
Hello. Hello.
All right,
Hello.
we're getting
now.
there. Oh, there we go. Excellent. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. It's a special pleasure to be with Supervisor Hahn. We've known each other a couple of minutes. We go back to the charter reform of the city charter in 1997. That's a while back. Since then, of course, Supervisor Hahn has gone on to hold pretty much every major office in this region, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. So don't let your children grow up to be journalists. We want to talk about the Olympics. Obviously, that's the reason that you all are here today. But before we did that, I thought it would be good just to step back a little and talk about someone. We are in the presence of someone who really has probably as rich a political history as anyone in Southern California. I wonder if you would just talk for a few minutes about the region today and compared to the one you grew up in. What's going well for Southern California today? What are we struggling with? What's your big take on how things are going here?
Yeah, thank you. And hello, everybody. You're such an interesting, engaged group of people that really care about these issues. And my favorite part of our session is going to be when we throw it out to them. Particularly as it relates to what you can tell me about how we can make Metro more writable and more attractive to people. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. My kids are third generation native Angelenos, which is kind of rare. My father was born in Los Angeles in 1920. In fact, the Olympics are great because my dad, when he was 12 years old, snuck in to the Coliseum with his brothers in the 32 Olympics, I think until they got caught and they got kicked out. I was at the 84 Olympics. It'll be fun for my grandkids to be at the 2028. But yeah, Los Angeles felt more like a small town, I think, growing up. I grew up kind of in South LA, kind of on the border of Inglewood. So it felt very different. But being, on the Los Angeles City Council, gosh, that was 2001 to 2011, 10 years. And for instance, I don't remember us having a homeless crisis when I was on the City Council of Los Angeles. I don't remember having a housing crisis or really talking about building out Los Angeles for a transit dependent society. So it feels like we didn't have a lot of foresight. We weren't thinking big enough back then. I went to Congress in 2011. I stayed there 5.5 years. I couldn't wait to get out and come back home. That was an awful place for me anyway. It wasn't the kind of politics I was raised in. It was very partisan. It was very difficult to get anything done. So I was happy to come home and be a county supervisor like my dad was and work again on issues that matter to people. But I do think probably our forefathers, I'm going to blame it on the forefathers, not the mothers, probably didn't think enough about in those days of housing, transit, and what could eventually, create a homeless crisis. So.
Do you ride the trains, buses when you were a kid?
No, I remember, although I do remember my dad was a big first day, last day. So if anything was ending or closing, he always wanted to take us all so we would remember it. 1962, the end of the red car. He drugged my brother and I, Jim, to ride it all the way to Long Beach when it ended. He's like, you will remember the day, the red car ended. I know, right? So, but my mom talked about riding the red car when she worked downtown LA. I think she worked at the Broadway or the May Company or something. So it was a system that took people from point A to point B. There was a red car that left downtown Los Angeles and went to Cabrillo Beach. Apparently, working folks, mostly men, would take the red car from downtown LA to the Cabrillo Beach bathhouse, rent a bathing suit. How gross is that? And swim in the ocean. We had a bathhouse, take a shower, get back in their work clothes, and go back down to Los Angeles. So there was a system. It's amazing that we let that system die because it really did crisscross all of Los Angeles.
And today, what again? We'll get to the Olympics in a moment, but what do you think gets people on the system and what discourages people from using the system?
Yeah, and that's what I'm really going to be interested in this very smart group out here telling me. I think number one is the fear of crime.
Mm-hmm. Keeping people off it, you mean?
Yeah, keeping people off of it. I think we can do a lot to improve it, but one incident where it's on the news, that somebody hijacked a bus and shot and killed somebody who was riding, that throws us back, years. I think it's also a little bit, except for those in this room, a lot of people don't really know how it works. Mm-hmm. They really don't know how to get from point A to point B. I've started writing it more and I'm learning so much. But the transit dependent folks are riding our system, right? When I get on, they are going to school, they are going to work, and I take it from San Pedro, they are going to the hospital, they're going to doctor's appointments. They know how it works. I think a lot of people still aren't really sure. They don't really understand the Transit Watch app. And so I do think fear, a lot of people don't know how it works, inconvenient, and cleanliness is a big thing. And I also hear from people who feel uncomfortable with the amount of those who are unsheltered, who are riding our system just because they have nowhere else to go during the day.
Is there anything meaningful to do about that?
Which one of those?
I guess what I was focusing on your last comment, those who are unhoused, who are riding those trains, obviously you want some kind of humane response, but one that also lets people feel comfortable on trains. Or buses? Is there a way?
Right. So we went to Philadelphia last year and looked at how they deal with those who are unsheltered on their trains and buses. They've created this hub of hope, which is below ground at one of the stations in Philadelphia, that anyone who is unsheltered, is homeless, even is going through a mental health crisis, can go to this hub of hope. It's a gigantic space that has food. It has a laundromat in there that they can actually get their clothes cleaned. It has a medical clinic. It has a play area for children. And so all day long on the system, if their idea of an ambassador, I forget what they have, they call it, and they see someone like that, they have a place to say, you know what, I'm going to help you get to this hub of hope. Our problem in LA is we still don't have enough good places that we can direct somebody to get that kind of help. But then becomes the crisis at the end of the line, which is an issue I didn't know about until a couple of years ago. At midnight, when our trains end for the night, they got to take them, clean them, maintain them. We kick people off at midnight in different end of the line cities in our county, Long Beach being one of them. And we have about still 40 people that get kicked off at midnight with no services, no help. And then I hear from my elected officials in Long Beach, what am I doing about it? So we're working harder to upstream, find these folks through our ambassadors. I don't want to arrest these people and put them in jail, but give them the kind of help they need. But it's a real issue.
Hard one, yeah. You mentioned that you were here in the '84 Olympics. Memories of that and things that you would like to see as we move into 2028 here that you'd like to see be part of these games or replicate from part of those?
Yeah, well, it was everybody was so afraid of the traffic jams that we were going to have in '84. And then either people left, I think Angelinos went somewhere else during the '84 games. It did seem relatively traffic free. And it seems like we were getting to the venues easy and quickly. I remember the lighting of the torch, Rayford Johnson climbing up those stairs. So my big thing this year, and I've been really being in Casey Wasserman's ear, you have to light the Olympic torch at the LA Memorial Coliseum for the opening ceremonies.
Is there any doubt about
there
that?
was doubt about that. In fact, I still, it's not clear. We did just hear that the opening ceremonies will be shared, I think, with SoFi Stadium, but we have the Olympic torch. There's nothing, in my opinion, that's more iconic than the LA Memorial Coliseum, the rings, and that torch. So I really want to see the torch lit at the beginning and remain lit until the end of the Paralympics.
Gotcha. What, you were in Paris? You had a chance to see some of the work. Did you learn things there that you would like to bring back to the games here?
Yes, I went specifically as the chair of Metro. I was not there to baguettes and red wine and Eiffel Tower. So I was there to see how their transit system worked. Of course, it's 150 years old. It's already built out. How do they get people after a venue empties out? How do they move people around? They move people around so quickly. They had trains every 90 seconds. So that's something I don't think we can replicate. But that was what really caught my attention, how quickly if you missed one train, the next one was coming 90 seconds later. The other thing I thought was interesting, which I'm trying to replicate here, inside the bus when you saw all the stops, right? Instead of just a street or a station, they had the Olympic logo insignia with the name of the venue or the name of the sporting event that was happening there. So you saw volleyball, you saw track and field, so even for someone who was visiting from outside, you might not necessarily know exactly where you were, but you knew which event you were trying to get to. And so I'm going to try to get that replicated inside our buses and trains.
Okay. I just heard in the previous panel, which I enjoyed very much, the discussion of GETS and the 2,700 buses that will be added to the system. As we think about legacy of these games and a lasting legacy, would say that seems like an instrumental part of this plan, but one that doesn't, in fact, leave much in way of a legacy. Am I reading that wrong, A? And B, are there other aspects of this, of the planning and of the improvements that will make, that you really do think will leave a lasting mark on transportation here?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to give those buses back and the people that came with them. But I do think what I'm hoping is maybe we're going to attract more Angelenos to ride Metro. First of all of our international visitors, they know how to ride public transportation. Like, it's second nature for our people coming from other countries. They ride public transit. It's the Angelenos that we're still trying to attract. So I'm thinking the legacy will be a good experience on a bus or a train that could translate after the Olympics to people riding Metro. And that's my goal, is to see if I can give that safe, clean, reliable, fun experience on Metro beyond the Olympics.
There had been some talk early on, the mayor used this term, the car-free Olympics. I don't hear that much anymore.
I was like, don't say that.
Is that, where is that?
Yeah, I know. The first time she said that, I'm like, oh, stop saying that. It's never going to be car free. We're not going to, prohibit cars from driving to certain venues, but we've transited to transit first. That's what I'm saying. Like, we're going to get people to think transit first. The venues are going to be all over, outside the city of LA. The city of Long Beach is hosting 11 events. So they're hosting more events than any other city outside of Los Angeles. But we on the County Board of Supervisors are trying to push Olympic, Paralympic experiences out to our 88 cities through fan zones and these houses, right? That's one thing we learned in Paris. They had these, we went to the USA House. And so they're houses that become the magnet for that particular country in the Olympic Paralympic experience. When we were in Croatia last year, we signed an agreement with the Croatian Olympic Organizing Committee to have the Croatia House in San Pedro. We hope we have more Croatians in San Pedro than any other place outside of Croatia. Who knew? 30,000. So this becomes now a place, even if you're not going to a game, you will show up at this house and it'll be the food and the big screen TVs and just a gathering spot for Croatians. So these are also going to be all over the county of Los Angeles. So we want people to take transit first, but we're not going to prohibit anybody from driving, which is why I wanted to push the water taxi from San Pedro to Long Beach.
We'll talk about the water
taxi. Yeah. I've been thinking about a water taxi for a long time.
I can tell.
Well, the Vincent Thomas Bridge is going to get closed down for, 2 years while they repair it. That is a major thoroughfare between Long Beach and San Pedro for the ILWU workers who work in both ports, for commuters, for truckers. It's going to be a major inconvenience. And so I was asking Caltrans, I think you should, sponsor a water taxi between San Pedro. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, there used to be a ferry from San Pedro to Terminal Island before there was a time, but there was not a Vincent Thomas Bridge. Oh, come on.
It wasn't. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So we took a ferry across, and Caltrans did not bite. So I'm going to ask Metro to explore the possibility. If we're trying to maybe make transit fun and exciting, and again, introduce in a different way, this, concept of riding public transportation, I wanted to float the idea of a water taxi. I think it's a great idea. I hope Metro takes it seriously, and I hope we can figure out how to fund it.
Okay, funding. Federal government and all of this. Well, it's very hard to predict day to day, the state of the Trump administration, obviously, but do you have a sense of the willingness, eagerness of the federal government to be a real full participant, or at least the Trump administration to participate and join you in paying for this?
Well, we're going to operate under the assumption that they do want to help us. I've heard the president talk about kind of takes credit for having the games be here in Los Angeles. And I think there's the sense, Los Angeles isn't hosting the Olympics. We are, but it's the United States of America. It's our games here in our country. And I'm hoping that they see it like that and will want to fund us. Yeah, we're asking for $3 billion, just Metro, from the federal government. And that's a lot of that is to lease the buses and the people that come with it. So that's a big ask. We have not heard a yes or no on that yet. But I was concerned when the new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, who I served with in Congress, made a comment about withholding transportation dollars from jurisdictions that did or didn't do something in line with the Trump
A
agenda.
birth rate issue.
The birth rate and the marriage rate.
So I can't even believe I'm asking this question, but
I'm not married.
Is there
Oh.
some idea that we would have, that Metro would be responsible for increasing birth rates in LA in order to get transportation money? Like
I
can't
know,
believe those words just came out of
I
my mouth.
know, but yeah, so we have signs now on our buses. No. Yeah, no, I felt like it was a criteria that had nothing to do with transportation,
Sure.
had nothing to do with public transportation, but that's the kind of things that raised a little bit of a red flag to me on whether or not they wanted to fund us. But I think we're going to lean in that this is the Olympic Paralympic Games of the United States of America. They're going to want it to be successful. He's going to want to be here probably, to open the games. I think that is a given. So I'm assuming they're going to also help support it.
Let me ask you one more, and then we'll turn to all of you for some questions.
Good.
On the previous panel, one of the panelists suggested, I was intrigued by this idea of the postcard. What would the postcard from this region say? What would we say to the world about who we are? In the context of the Olympics or the World Cup or any of these, I suppose, what does that postcard say to you?
Yeah, I think they answered it really well in the I think Salida did such a good job of we are Los Angeles, right? We are diverse. We are interesting. We are young. We are alive. I think it's really about showcasing who we are. We're the beaches. We're the mountains. We are this large region. Considering Paris, is a really kind of a small municipality for something like the Olympic Games. Los Angeles County, 88 cities. We have so much going for us that I think it's our opportunity to really be on the world stage. And I have no doubt that we will excel on the world stage as long as we light that torch at the opening ceremonies.
Very good. Okay, so let me open it to some of you. How do we do this? Is Jacob, are you back?
And I
there,
want
Jacob?
questions, but I really also want you to say what you think I should do to make transit better.
So please get your questions in because currently the only one is from me.
Let's go.
So I will ask it. There's all the silly stuff about birth rate, but I do think that the administration is saying we're not going to give money to sanctuary cities. We're not going to give money to cities that make bike lanes. I heard that from the secretary recently. Are there concrete policies that the County Board of Supervisors, Metro would change in order to get Olympic funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're struggling with that a little bit. I think there's a pretty strong core value on the Metro Board of Directors and the LA County Board of Supervisors to say no to that. I feel like more than ever, we are seeing ourselves as sort of putting the guardrails up for our residents of LA County. I am making sure that our immigrants who ride our system have access to the Know Your Rights card. I think it's really important that we remember that for LA County in particular, we are a safety net. We're here to keep people from falling through the cracks and to protect people where they are and who they are. So I'm speaking for myself, but I don't have a sense that we're going to start changing our policies, but I do know that our documents are being scrutinized and scrubbed right now by the federal government. And they are looking for particular words to justify maybe not helping us. But I don't see us backing down.
Well, in fact, in that vein, the postcard that we just discussed, diversity
Yeah.
is one of those words, right?
Right.
So one of the things that I would think we would most want to celebrate about this region could in fact be the sort of triggering word for the administration.
Absolutely. And you know, for Metro, right, we're leaning into women like a lot, you know, particularly as it relates to careers in construction, in logistics, and in transportation. We have so many things that we're leaning in our contracts. We really are trying to hold prime contractors accountable for you know, helping smaller businesses. We have a 48 by 28. We also have a 28 by 28. We have a 48 by 28, which is 48% small businesses by 2028. We want to be included in all of our Metro contracts. So we feel it's an opportunity to lift up so many people in LA County through the Olympic Paralympic Games, and I don't see us backing down.
I'll ask one more follow on this and then we'll get to more questions. But the president seemed to indicate after the fires that fire relief would be contingent on voter ID laws. Would you personally support that? Changing voter ID laws or requiring a different kind of voter ID in exchange for liberating money for people who are victims of the fire?
Yeah, you know, isn't that a shame? Listen, I was in Congress 5.5 miserable years. But I will tell you the amount of natural disasters that happened when I was there, and they weren't LA, all over the country, and never once did Congress put any strings attached to disaster relief. It's sort of like we Americans, we are all in when you have a tragedy. I don't care if it's a tornado in middle America or, you know, horrible, there was coastal floodings on the East Coast. America was like, we're there for you. Because we know the disaster is going to come to us one day. There was never a talk of putting strings on disaster relief. It's just not the time that you hang something over people's heads when they're at their lowest point in their life. These people in Palisades and Altadena lost everything. And it's just, I'm hoping it's just a phase that the federal government is going through, and they'll come to their senses.
So, Jacob.
Answers to the question as well. Feel free to put them in the slide. I'll have a conversation here. We'll go over to David Fenn. Or Juan.
My name is Juan Matute. I'm the Deputy Director of the Institute of Transportation Studies at UCLA. So I had a role in putting our Arrowhead Symposium together and then this follow-up event. And wanted to take your invitation to suggest some of the things that could be done. Those of you in the room who've seen me speak before know that one of the things that will come out of my mouth is bus lanes.
Yes.
It's really amazing in terms of
I agree.
what a bus lane can do for ridership, operational efficiency, but also culturally, to say, hey, there is this government service that we're providing, and the government from the metro on down to the city is all on board with saying this gets priority.
Yeah.
And that is an amazing way to encourage people to adopt a certain behavior. It'll also mean you can operate a lot better service and more service. The other thing that I would encourage is, and you mentioned this, it's the legibility or the understandability of the system. I've done work as a researcher and then now in public service as part of the state's Transit Transformation Task Force to really understand what it is hard for people in this room to understand, and that is that there is a language of multimodal mobility that is not intuitive for people who are outside of the field. And so one of the things I would encourage, and this may be well received, may probably be prior board motions, but one of the things that I really think needs to happen is taking a user experience perspective on many journeys through the system, and it actually bringing people in who have disabilities, including cognitive disabilities, and having them inform
Yes.
what would be needed to make those journeys easier to understand,
Yes.
more legible.
Yeah.
And if you do that, and physical disabilities as well, if you do that, then you'll end up with all of this information about universal design that'll make the system more accessible for everybody. Because it is very hard for people, and I used to be among these people, to understand how hard it is to figure out a transit system
Yeah.
if you don't have a master's degree in it and 15 years of training.
Yeah. That's,
I will also say that the entire economy around us has moved towards simplifying transactions, the way you pay for things, and the way we pay for transit
yes.
is being reformed at Metro.
Yeah.
During the introduction, I was able to order an early Father's Day gift or pre-order an early Father's Day gift for my dad, who's a big Grateful Dead fan. So he'll be getting your book when it comes out, Jim.
This has all been working.
And that is so much more seamless
Yeah.
than anything interacting with one of the multiple mobility systems in Los Angeles County.
Thank you. I agree with you. I think, we're working on that. I will say on the Metro Board, we have we've got a disability access task force, and we did a motion last month about neurodiversity. But we need people with lived experience to just ride the system with us and say, this is why this doesn't work. And it's true, but I'm learning a lot just myself by riding it. But I will say our bus drivers, at least the one on the Silver Line, they have been fantastic for anyone with mobility challenges, particularly folks that are using a wheelchair. The bus driver gets out from behind their barrier, helps the person on, makes sure they're secure, says, where are you going? Where are you getting off? Just so I can be aware and help you. So I've been very impressed with our operators on our system. They are some of the most decent human beings ever, who were also under attack and had been assaulted various times, which is why we're the first transit agency, I think, in the country. We have now installed barriers, plexiglass barriers around our drivers just to make sure that they're okay. But thank you for that.
David? Oh, there, we're over here, yeah.
Hi, David Fenn, City of West Hollywood. We've seen a lot of success with congestion pricing statistics out of New York City recently, and I know Metro's had some efforts in the past that have been delayed. Is there an opportunity with the Olympics to kind of revive those efforts?
I mean, yes.
I would describe that as a cautious yes.
By the way, Mike Bonin, it's so great to see you. Can I just tell you that Mike Bonin I served with him, biggest advocate for transit riders, particularly for bus riders, next gen. Mike Bonin really lived that experience and made sure the rest of us lived it too. I think he's probably a big fan of, are you a big fan of congestion pricing?
Around LAX would be great.
Yeah, I am not there yet, but there's always an opportunity. I'm not there yet. I think we ought to give a lot of other opportunities to see if we can get people out of their car. I'm just not, I think there's just so many folks that we would have to exempt, and we have to figure it out because they use their car for their work, and low income folks who that's their only, their truck is their job site, right? So I know there'd be a lot of that. So I'm not there yet, but there's always an opportunity to revive it. I don't know where the appetite is anymore on the board of directors, to be honest with you.
What about for something that's Olympic specific? There was some talk in the
Yeah,
previous panel of an Olympic transit tax or a games mobility pass. Does that appeal to you?
Yes, it does. Very similar to the Dodger Express, which I love that. It gives, again, sometimes non-metro users an opportunity if they have a ticket to the Dodger game, they get to ride for free on our Metro Express. There's been a suggestion that every bus that ends up anywhere close to Dodger Stadium could be a Dodger Express. If you have bought a ticket to a Dodger game, you ride for free. It's integrated ticket something. There's a word for that. Integrated ticketing system.
That's exactly right. That's the right word for it.
Where if you buy a ticket to the, I mean, I'm holding up like it's a real thing, right? I'm sure that they'll find a digital way to do this.
I'm sure that's right.
But you have a ticket to a venue, it also becomes your tap card. So I do think there's opportunities for that.
I'll pass it over to Jose Alvarez.
Where's Jose? Oh, there we go.
Thank you. I really love. Hello, can you hear me now? Great. Hey, microphones, by the way. Yeah, really love what you mentioned, Supervisor Hahn, around crime, safety, cleanliness being sort of that barrier of entry into the system. But I'm a consistent writer myself of the system. Commend you for being one as well. And I would say that headways, consistency are something that's very regularly a concern for a consistent transit dependent rider.
Yeah.
And, you know, hearing your anecdote about the transit system in Paris or in the games every 90 seconds, and you very clearly immediately saying that's not going to really happen here.
Right.
But how can we increase it? How can we make it a priority during the games? So then that could be a lasting legacy and actually bring more people into the system long term.
Right. Well, I agree. It's just that at this point, we're not going to be building any more trains before 28. And again, Paris is a 150-year-old transit system. It's all built out. We will have, you know, maybe 3,000 more buses, which will help that. And then I think it's really small things even before that I'm working with our drivers now, because again, I hear an earful on the bus when I'm riding. Somehow people recognize me and they want to talk. You know, one of the concerns was people said, you know, sometimes we're at a bus stop and because there's no shade, right? They're sometimes having to stand further back somewhere, maybe where there's a tree, and, you know, the bus goes right by them. And then the next one is not for 30 minutes. Okay, so now they're late to work or they're late to whatever. Now, if they're transit dependent, they're going to be doing that every day. If they're not, they're going to be like, okay, that was not a really good experience. So working with somehow a better system for our drivers to understand who's around the bus stop that needs to take that particular bus. But yeah, definitely quicker, faster. If you miss it, the next one has to come before 30 minutes or you're going to miss the event more than likely. So we're working on that, but I think the extra buses will make a big difference.
Jacob? Here we go. Up here, yes.
Thank you, Supervisor Hahn. And we do see you riding. We really appreciate that. And like, thank you to your social team, whoever's putting the videos out. With Measure G's passage, there's going to be a restructuring of the Metro Board. We're going to have to change the way that we do that. Wouldn't this be a great opportunity to require that Metro Board members have to ride transit a certain amount of times per week? And that could be the best way to make transit better.
I agree with that. Somebody else has suggested that, and I think it's a great idea. I try not to gloat with my other directors that I ride, although every time I ride, I spend the first 5 minutes of my chair's remark talking about what I learned today on the bus. But I do think it makes it sense. But you know, we had one director, I'm not going to call her out, but she, during the sort of the crime spree time, she publicly said she would not ride our system. She did. You're right. You converted her. But I think a lot of people heard the first remark and maybe didn't hear the second, didn't see the second one. So I think it's critical that directors ride the system. I think you learn a lot. It's good. It's important, and it influences the policy decisions that I'm making as a board director by writing the system.
Can I ask you, what requirement would you impose? How much would you require? How much ridership would you require?
Oh, well,
See, and this is where it starts.
yeah.
That's-
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's funny because I'm not a real writer. Like, I don't really want to brag about it because I can't call myself a real writer, right? I do it, maybe twice a month, right? But I learn a lot from that, but I can't boast to say that I'm a real writer, because you know what happens? And this is why the system's not there yet. I'll think, oh, it's okay, that's too inconvenient for me to take the system today because I have to go downtown and then I have to go over here and then I have to get back. I have a meeting in Whittier and then I have to go back to San Pedro. And you're already thinking this system is inconvenient to get people from point A to point B. So I know, but I think it's a good requirement.
Do you ever feel unsafe?
I don't. But it doesn't really matter whether or not I'm feeling safe. It's what everybody else feels, but I don't feel unsafe. But that's not really a criteria for the rest of the public.
We have time for maybe one more. We got one out there, Jacob?
Measure M is hitting its 10-year opportunity for potentially reinvesting and changing the different categories, highways, transit. Is there appetite for that? What kind of projects that maybe weren't foreseen at the time Measure M was passed might be funded, things like that?
So I have to be a big advocate for the Southeast Gateway line, right? That's one of the things that I have just been pushing. This is a light rail that goes from Artesia to Union Station, one seat ride. For 20 years, it was called the West Santa Ana branch. So every time I went to lobby for it in Sacramento or DC, they'd be like, what, now you're building, you're in Orange County, what is this? So I forced Metro to allow me to change the name. And we had a naming contest, which really engaged a bunch of young people in Southeast LA. And they voted to name it the Southeast Gateway Line, which pretty much says where it is. And that's a line that probably would serve the most underserved region of LA County, Southeast LA, who now are taking 2 and 3 buses to get anywhere. So that would be one of them. I just want to throw this in. I was interested if there's support from this audience based on, I don't think we can rely on funding from the federal government. We might not even be able to rely on funding from Sacramento. So I'm kind of excited that there's a $20 billion bond measure that Sacramento is looking to put on the ballot to fund our transportation projects here. Well, all in California, but I'm sure we would benefit from that. And that's something I would campaign for, I would vote for. I think we need to control our own revenue sources ourselves, so we're not at the whim of people who would want us to change policies to get federal funding.
Well, with that, I think we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank all of you for being here. There are copies of Blueprint Magazine, I think, out in the lobby, so I hope you'll help yourselves. And I especially want to thank you, Supervisor. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim Newton.